everybody, it's Rebecca here at Why Mermaids, and it's time for another monthly recommendations video. Monthly Recommendations is a Goodreads group created by Trina at Between Chapters and Kayla Rain, and we recommend books based on a specific topic. So, the month of September 2016, it's been a year now since we started this. The topic this month is science fiction. So we've done fantasy, but we haven't done science fiction. So this should be pretty fun. I like science fiction and fantasy a lot, so I have a lot. I'm only gonna go into slight detail about them because there are a lot. So if you want more information about anything, let me know and I can hit you up in the comments with that information. Or whatever. The first one I'm going to say is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. Is a post-apocalyptic story. Instead of zombies, it's more of a vampire type story. It's more of an introspective story about our main character and how he's dealing with this crisis because he seems to be the only human left. And it's really good. And so if you like post-apocalyptic kind of insular stories as opposed to like crazy things happening and lots of action, then this is a good pick. It's really interesting. It's really short. It's only like 150 pages or so, and it's not like the movie. So it's kind of like the movie, but it's not like the movie at the same time. Anyway, the next one is one that I feel like a lot of people are gonna mention, and it's The Martian by Andy Weir, which is just a really great, it's like the first like science-y science fiction book that I read and didn't understand but was okay with it. Like, it has math and science in there, and I'm like, whoa, whoa. But it does it in a way that it doesn't matter. Like, it explains it to you, so it's very realistic, but in a way that if you don't understand it, it's okay. And I liked that because it made it feel realistic, and yet I could still follow what was happening. Anyway, The Martian is about a guy who's left on Mars. It's what it's about. He's the only human. He's left on Mars for time, and he has to survive. And every time you think he's doing okay, something else happens where it's not okay. It's Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And then more. So the movie's also a really good adaptation of the book, and it's funny too, which you wouldn't expect. So The Martian, there you go. Next up, would it be a science fiction recommendation video if I didn't briefly mention Red Rising by Pierce Brown? Probably not, so I'm mentioning Pierce Brown's Red Rising. There you go. Do it. Read it. You'll like it, hopefully. Next up is The Circle by Dave Eggers, and I really like Dave Eggers anyway. I like his writing. He wrote the movie version of Where the Wild Things Are. He also, his memoir, A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius, is phenomenal, and The Circle is also really good. The Circle is a realistic dystopian about technology, and the world is slowly going to this point, and it's scary and realistic and scary. They're making a movie with Tom Hanks and Emma Watson. I think it comes out this year, maybe? I haven't heard anything about it. It's gonna be good. You should read it before you see the movie. It'll creep you out and make you question technology and everything you stand for, but in a good way. We're gonna throw it back to 1984 by George Orwell. It's a great classic dystopian novel. It's where the term Big Brother came from, and where everything, even your thoughts, are controlled. And it talks about how you can't trust anybody, and they can't even write. There's always somebody watching. Big Brother is always watching. So if you really like dystopians and you haven't read 1984, it is a classic, and I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite books that I've ever read. It's really good. Another classic science fiction story that I feel like a lot of people have read before, but maybe not, is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. I've only read the first book in this like Ender's Game series, Saga thing. It's a lot of books, but I've only read the first one, but I did really enjoy it. Like, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. My husband read part of it and he compared it to Halo, so if you're really into the Halo games, it's very similar apparently with the parts of the ideas. It's about a genius boy who gets sent off to a battle station where he's learning to command troops in space, and it's just really good. The way that they talk about battle and they talk about fighting and the battle room, it's just really creative and inventive and cool. It's really cool. And the movie does not do it justice at all, so don't judge it by the movie if you've seen it. Next up is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffengger, and this one, I read it a long time ago, and the movie was okay, but it's time travel, and we like time travel in this house, and it's this guy who can time travel, but he can't choose when or where he time travels, and he can't choose when, like, the time, it just happens. He can't help it. He just goes. And you don't know when he's gonna come back. You don't know what's happening. And he and his wife have kind of been in each other's lives for a long time, because he time traveled back to meet her when she was young, and it was a different version. So they're kind of living with different times of themselves and what they know about each other, and it's a really interesting connection and relationship that they have. It is the time traveler's wife, so it's what she has to deal with as well, with him being gone all the time, and parts of it are a little depressing, but overall it's a really good story, and it's a cool time travel type story. Another one that a lot of people are probably gonna mention is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, which is a video game type story. It's, if you haven't read it or if you haven't heard of it, like, you should definitely do it. They're making a movie with Steven Spielberg. He's making the movie, and it's gonna be really cool, I think, because I feel like I like all of Steven Spielberg's movies, and this story was one of my favorites the year I read it. It's one of my favorites now. I need to reread it soon, because I really like to. If you don't know pop culture references from the 80s, parts of it may be harder for you to get behind and to really like love, but I think if you get past that, I think you could still really like the story and the inventiveness of this technology. It's really cool. It's really cool. Next up is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, which is another dystopian story where women are, you know, shunned, because that's what happens, and they're not really allowed to do things on their own or without men, and they're kind of more treated poorly. And so the handmaids, I forget all the details behind it because it's been a while since I've read it, but I do know that I was really moved by this story and kind of the idea of men being in control and women wanting to fight back against it. And it's a classic story. Again, Margaret Atwood is a classic Canadian female writer, and if you haven't read anything by her, I do recommend it. It's fairly short, and it's really interesting, so I think you'll like it. Even though I did a very poor job at describing what it's about. Sorry. My favorite book when I was a kid was The Giver by Lois Lowry, so I have to mention it now. If you've never read The Giver, it's a really short, easy read. I love it. It's, again, I really like alternate societies and worlds, and this one is one where everything is the same. So sameness is like the goal of the community and the goal of the world. And so everybody sees in black and white, everybody has the same milestones at the same time. You don't choose your husband or your children, they're not actually your own children. A job is chosen for you, and then it's the story of Jonas, who becomes the next receiver, who is a receiver of memory. And he takes the memories of the old world, of the world that we're in now, with color and music, but also pain and suffering, and he kind of has to figure out what to do with that, because he doesn't feel like it's right to deprive the community of these memories and these emotions. So it's really good, it's really short. I love the ambiguous ending, even though there are sequels, so it kind of gives it away in that, but I like to pretend that the sequels don't exist even though I haven't read them, just so that I can have my ambiguous ending. But if you don't like ambiguous endings, there are sequels. And finally, the last thing I'm gonna mention is the Silo Saga by Hugh Howey. This was a self-published series on Amazon, I believe. It's really, really, really cool. It's the story of this world that lives underground in a big giant silo, and they can't go outside because if they go outside, the air will kill them. It'll like kill them within minutes, basically. So it's this world in this silo, and so it's a very tiny insular world, you know, you're living underground, and it talks a lot, like everything is up and down, and the different levels of society are based on where you live in the silo, and it's just a really, really, really cool story, a cool concept, and we read it for book club, and all of us were just like, this is awesome, and I went and read the other two. It's one that I definitely really enjoyed and will read again, and it was just, it wowed me. And it should wow you too. Anyway, those are my recommendations for science fiction books in the, you know, month of September. If you have any good science fiction recommendations, let me know in the comments below. I know there are a ton that I didn't mention. There are a ton I haven't read and that are on my TBR, like Dune and Wrinkle in Time are both on my TBR to read soon. But if you have any more that you have that I didn't mention and that you absolutely love, let me know. And let me know your thoughts on any of these if you've read them. And that's it for me today. I'll see you next time.